Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 212 of Kouryer Podcast. As of time of the recording of this episode is 3rd of March of 2023, which it's kind of important to mention because originally we were recording this episode on 14th of February, so it took a lot of time because of some technical issues to get this episode ready and out. But fortunately and finally we're here. So. Well, our today's guest is Mr. Omar Faruq Tawsif. He's a freelance 3D artist from Chittagong, Bangladesh. And of course, before we jump into the signature questions of the podcast, I need to quickly mention in the for contact section of the captions, you can find the ID to his Instagram account, the links to his art station, Twitter, and YouTube channel, and also, most importantly, his Gumroad, which we will talk about, the stuff in there as well on the podcast. And with that out of the way, how are we doing today?
Hey Ramtin, thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And by the way, how's the new router working for you, by the way? Because the last time we were trying to record a podcast, you had some, Wi-Fi issues and stuff like that. Is everything working fine?
Actually, to be honest, things are looking very gloomy already, but I think we can survive through this. I mean, it is getting frozen sometimes, but I can hear you.
All right,
That
that's
is
good.
a good sign.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes, but hopefully everything goes smooth and well.
Actually, the network is pretty slow during this time, but I chose this time because it is the least likely to have power shortage at this around. I mean, there is no guarantee when a power shortage happens in the daytime. So,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's jump into the first question, the signature question of the podcast, which is give us a little introduction on how we got into the world of visual arts and design. Basically, tell us the story of, what made you want to pursue art as your main thing in life.
actually, I consider it as a fateful event in my life because I never actively pursued art. But I think since my early childhood, I like to draw. I used to draw from observation. You can still see that most of my works are based on observation. I mean, observation from other artists' artworks and translating them to 3D. So anyway, it is not something I did never thought of pursuing when I grew up, but I found it always cool. I mean, I could see something and draw it. We call this observational art. I mean, I couldn't draw that much well from imaginations. Actually, this is pretty normal because drawing or painting from reference is the best way to start. So, anyway, the first time so it was actually during my high school when, as usual, I draw something. It was my hand. So in the next day, when my mother saw it, she thought I have great potential as an artist. Mama are like that. Even though we don't think highly of ourselves, they do. So in the next day, she would buy me a special notebook for drawing or sketching, and she was asking around what to do because she thinks her son has a good talent. Though I was not convinced about that, still not. So eventually, she admitted into a local art academy. It was on the other corner of the city, and I used to go there with my mom. So I think that was the beginning of everything. But I didn't actually continue there. mean, it was actually very far. So somehow I did survive there for 3 years. I learned a lot of things, like there was a great instructor. So I did loved venturing a lot into the world of art and paintings. So that was that before I dropped out from that local art academy. And here comes the part where I somehow ended in the world of 3D. So it was actually during my high school. I had a computer. Oh, I forgot to mention it. Having a computer was something like a turning point because it was not common us for people around us to have a computer from very early. I think I was like 10 year or 12 when I first got mine, and I tested a lot of things in Photoshop and stuff. So anyway, it was during my high school when I was looking for some free painting softwares, and that is how I found Blender. Blender is totally free and open source, but still a pity because I didn't actually know what to do with Blender. All I had was a documentations of some sort. I did manage to create a scene. So again, I dropped out from Blender too. But eventually, I came across the online course. You could say it a course. I mean, the Blender Guru's donut tutorial. Actually, it was Enterprise who first showed me what to expect from Blender. Before that, I didn't know what I could expect from Blender, and that played a big part in why I didn't try Blender for more than 2 weeks. So I do regret it sometimes that I had a better chance of starting out earlier. So I don't regret it that much actually because eventually I got back into it. So yes, it was Endo's tutorials, his NBL series or Donut series. Am I going into very deep? I mean, should I shorten this?
No, no, no. You can go as long as deep as you want. Actually,
I just thought I am talking too much about my history.
no, that's the point.
So
That's your episode. Then you should actually.
yes, thank you. I appreciate that. I was getting carried away. So anyway, I think that was the first time I started to enjoy venturing into the world of 3D and following his tutorials. He had some short tutorials too. I think I followed most of his old tutorials like the light bulb scene or the sakura scene and so on. But I gave up on Blender once again because, as you know, I'm actually pursuing the academic life still now. It was actually hard to get involved with or something else. I mean, at least I couldn't give it the time it deserved. And the thing about me is when I try something, I try to put my heart into it. And if I don't get the chance to spend enough time on it, I eventually give up. So that happened once again. But I think the but I think it was the pandemic what brought me back into Blender once again. Actually, I was already a student of mechanical engineering. It was a busy life handling labs and those things we do in university. But pandemic gave me a break. So even though pandemic was tough on some point of view, I try to look at the bright side because that is when I found my passion once again and I decided to spend more time on it. But I have yet to reach my signature goal. I was still trying random stuff. You know what people do when they find random tutorials? They try to try out as much thing as they can. So I think there was an inhibitor to our growth as artists because if we don't select a niche or a direction, it is hard to grow. We can't get good at every site. Probably know that. So anyway,
And well, what led you to the path of going after hand
yes,
painting,
yes,
texturing?
I was trying to go there,
Oh yeah, sorry,
and
go on.
anyway, so actually, another thing played a big role in landing me into the world of hand painting. I would say it was Sketchfab. I mean, I used to. I used to join the challenges Sketchfab held. It was Sketchfab holds different challenges with different themes regularly, and back then it was something like hand painting, a hand painted scene about children's illustration book. So I just wanted to join it to get some exposure because previously I realized that challenges are a great way to get exposure, especially on Sketchfab or similar platforms like that. So I didn't actually have anything much of expectations from that challenge, but still I tried my best. Like I gathered a lots of reference of my favorite artist. There was Hikala and many more. So I did create a watercolor style scene. It was called The Lake of True Desire. And to my utter surprise, it was chosen as the first place. And it was very hard to believe, but eventually it led me to this idea that yes, I guess I am somewhat good with hand painting. Also, I used to follow a few artists before, for example, Mickey Bench or Jasmine Fakri. You can check out their works. They are specialized in hand painted artworks, especially Mickey Bench. He played the he played as the biggest source of inspiration for my works. So but still I wasn't actually sure how I could do the same style of artworks in Blender because there was not much resources about how to achieve hand painted look. There was tutorials about game art. For example, I think I found something like game assets, hand painted game assets from Grand Avid's tutorial. But still, I wasn't sure how to get them looking very painterly, like Mickey Bench's artworks. So eventually, I found out that the solution was very simple. I just had to turn off any lighting influence in my scene. Actually, if you turn off the shaders, light influence, then you can completely control light and shadows in 3D. And that is the biggest clue about how to bring completely painterly artwork looks in 3D. And it began from there. And it was a certain artwork called Vitamin Bomb by Georgi Dimitrov. Maybe you can remember the banana scene. I consider that as the first successful implementation of this style of artworks. And since I was satisfied with it and how mentally it looked, I continued. And the rest are actually based on the very similar principle. I just hand paint everything. I hand paint on 3D meshes. It is completely like painting, but instead of painting on canvas, I am just painting on the surface of our 3D models, just like how you can paint on your glass or stuff.
All right, and well, I also saw one of your works. You did a study by one of the works of Joe Anya Elvidge, and I think it was one of your first works as well, right?
You are talking about Anya, right?
Yeah.
Anya, Joe. Yes, yes. Actually, Anya and Peter, they were one of the very first artists I chose to work based on their works. I mean, my works are based on my favorite artist, and she was one. I loved those dilapidated scenes she made. That I feel like these were such a great combination of nature and civilization, like how nature can take over abandoned civilizations and stuff. Actually, I like the control of saturations in her works. Like you can see that those artworks have very nice, well balanced, saturated colors. And yes, I'm a sucker for nice colors. That explains why most of my works are colorful.
Yeah, actually, because I kind of realized, that was work of, Anya, because she was a couple episodes ago, she was on the podcast as well. You can, check out
Yes,
her
I
episode as
noticed.
well. Yeah. And it's kind of interesting, I also need to mention something, and let's talk about this, is the fact that like just about, I think, a month or 2 months ago, not a lot of people knew about your work, like, I mean, of course, there's a
Yes,
lot of niche people like from Sketchfab, and Blender forums and stuff, might have known you, because you're doing
yes,
a pretty niche thing, and it's just, your situation kind of proved something to me that I kind of knew from before, but it's kind of interesting. Let me explain. So you were working on hand painted, textures, you even on your Gumroad have, by the way, for anyone who's interested in the style you're seeing above us on YouTube, the link to the Gumroad leads to, first there's a CR basic brush pack for Blender for texture painting, which is just free. You can pick it up without any worries. And there's also like a very interesting, illustrative brush pack for Blender texture painting. They're a little bit more, specialized, but and it comes with a very low price of $5. So, if you want to, support artists, you can go purchase that as well, and you can consider that a donation box as well, like that. And well, let me explain. So he has been, working on, hand painted textures and and all that stuff in Blender for a while, and you recently did a study of a work of Noah Verrier, of one of his works. And for anyone who doesn't know who Noah Verrier is, I also need to mention that there's this genre of art that's been getting really popular in the past couple of years. It's basically traditional mediums mixed with, modern subjects. And Noah Verrier is one of those artists, which on Twitter is also like very famous as well. It's like basically doing oil paintings of, like random modern subjects, maybe like a Big Mac and like a grilled cheese sandwich, or maybe a cup of tea and a cake. And I think you did one of the like a 3D studies of one of his works, and you kind of had his attention.
yes.
And yeah, long story
The
short,
yes.
yeah.
I mean, the thing I love most about Noah's work is the very cottagecore look of his works. I mean, when I first came across his works, I was like very confused. I mean, I can totally tell that it is something of my era, but it just feels like a master artist from past painted it. So when I dig more into it, then I realized yes, he's indeed from our era, and this impressionism he bring into this his artworks is
Yeah,
what I love most about it, most about those artworks.
yeah. And the thing is, long story short, you caught his attention and he messaged you, and basically you're doing a collaboration with him, for his new NFT project. But the thing is, the interesting thing for me is, when you work on something, for a long time and you practice it and you get good at it, sure, you might at this, like, you might not get a lot of opportunities at first, for a long time, but if you prepare yourself enough in the niche that no one's really looking at, and then suddenly an opportunity arises, that's what most people call luck. But that's not called luck. Luck is basically preparation meets opportunity. And your case is kind of proof of that as well. Because you were just doing hand painting texture style for the love of it, and then and it so happens that you got the chance to do this as well. And I'm sure in the future you're going to get more opportunities as well. But the
Yes,
thing I'm trying to most say to people is to just genuinely follow what you love. You might not know when the opportunity gets you.
yes, you have brought up a very interesting topic. I mean, like you said, it is not a very common niche or direction. I mean, there is not much people who needs hand painted 3D scenes. I mean, there are 3D works that looks like painting many times. For example, Arcane or many games are hand painted. For example, League of Legends. I bet those assets are hand painted. But my nature was a bit different. I mean, I wanted to pursue the true painterly effect in 3D. And as you can guess, these are not the most optimized to be used in 3D. So yes, it was very hard to get works through this niche. And, and I even sometimes thought of giving up on this and pursuing hand painted game art and stuff like that so that I can support myself. But I just didn't feel like it. I mean, if I don't have the same amount of motivation or passion for those, then there was just no point of doing that. So yes, I just decided to continue. For example, as long as I was getting comments like, "Hey, this work is very inspiring," or someone reaching out saying they were very surprised. They thought my work was 2D and they were in for a treat. Turned out it was 3D. So these people always helped me to continue my niche. I mean, I was happy as long as I could found people valuing this. I would probably continue as a secondary hobby, but getting more works give me the confidence to pursue this. And I finally had the gut to decide that yes, it was not a completely meaningless work. And so far, I had the chance to work on TV series. For example, this kind of work can cut down the budget of 2D animation series. For instance, if this kind of hand painted or painterly 3D scenes are used for animations, then the studio won't need a background artist. I mean, they would need a background artist, but not for every camera and angles. I mean, it gives a lots of versatility, and you can have more freedom in a 2D looking painterly scene in 3D. So, I mean, if you are thinking about jumping into painterly scene, I, 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 I want to encourage you. There is lots of opportunities. It was, for example, you can work for animation, and also it is getting very popular in VR and AR. I mean, most of my freelancing commissions are about VR projects or VR games. since you can perhaps guess that people will find it amazing if they can experience paintings in 3D, especially with VR. So eventually, getting those opportunity helped me to realize that there was no point of giving up the thing I love most. So you are right. If you love something, you should continue. Maybe it is not the time yet, but eventually a chance may arise. Though I guess luck is a big factor.
I kind of agree with you to an extent, but I don't think it's necessarily like, how do you call it, like, if you had, like luck only comes if you've worked hard and are ready for the chance.
Yes,
So I
yes.
don't think that's entirely luck.
I mean, you can't grab the favor of luck if you give up on your works midway. I mean, luck will eventually come across you, but if you are not there to embrace it, then what is the point of luck?
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
that
And
is that ambiguous?
yeah.
I mean, I find it lucky because getting commission is a big deal or have great importance. For instance, I need hardwares to work and stuff, and I noticed I get very few contracts. Only, for instance, in a month, like 1 or 2% reach out, and eventually those deals works out. And I find it a very lucky things because the probability declines when you are getting approached by few people.
Yeah. And here's an interesting question now that I want to ask you. Who are some of your favorite artists and designers that have inspired you the most? I mean, of course, you already mentioned some people, but if you could, think about right now, who were some of the most influential people on your art, who are they?
I would still pick Mickey Bench because he was the person who introduced me to this direction of art. I mean, before coming across his works, I didn't imagine that there could be such things. Like, I mean, when I first came across his works, I was like totally surprised. I mean, if you check out some of his works, he used to do this same kind of thing I do right now. He used to recreate other artists to the paintings. But it is not like when I saw his works, I didn't actually wanted to do the same because I didn't know how to proceed. I mean, I was a very much like a noob. It, I found his works very early, and after that, if I need to talk about my other favorite artist, I would pick those who inspire me to get into Blender. For instance, I follow a lot of artists, and, and sometimes their works shows up in my feed, and sometimes I feel the urge of yes, I have to make this in 3D, no matter what, no matter what techniques I have to invent. So some of those artists could be Peter Chan. Peter Chan creates really beautiful colors in his works. Also, I love to go through traditional style artworks too. That is where Noah Barrier comes from. Another one would be watercolor artist Ayan Fenali. I have yet to recreate. I have yet to create a watercolor style artwork yet. I was thinking of trying that when I'm done with my exams. So I haven't done much watercolor paintings yet. You can expect that very soon.
All
Also,
right. Oh, sorry. Go on.
actually, actually, it is actually hard to remember those foreign names. But if I look at my Insta, some of them has like pseudonames, so I'm not even sure what are they called. Okay, never mind. Let's continue.
Yeah, and so you kind of mentioned about some of the stuff you're working on right now. So you said hand painting, like oil painting style textures, if I'm not wrong,
Actually,
right?
I don't actually mind what kind of look it will get. I mean, as long as it is painterly, it can be oil paint looking or watercolor. It's like of a personal challenge for me to recreate any kinds of 3D paintings. And maybe actually I have done lots of types of artworks. Some of them are traditional looking and some have the look of digital artworks like the tree stump or the pencil box artwork. Also, there is a koi artwork. It was inspired by a painting by Elizabeth. Yes, I wanted to mention her. I really love this koi artwork she did. Actually, my artworks are not only about texture painting. Sometimes I like to add grease pencil to bring more life into those. For example, maybe you can remember the fountain by Joanna. Grease pencil helped me to get closer to this artwork, and you can check the water animations. These were done with grease pencil, including the foliage. So yes, pretty. I like to recreate any style of artworks as long as it is painterly.
Yeah, and there's actually some really interesting like shaders that people are have developed in the like the shader nodes in Blender that I mean
Yes,
they're
yes,
not
they
as
are like
stylized as you.
pretty genius, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe you are referring to 3 Digital. I think his name
Uh,
was
I think there are a
Alan.
bunch of people who are doing it, but yeah, I think there's one that got really popular suddenly, like recently,
Yes.
where it makes
Also,
complete
another
shader.
underrated person is like 100 Dips. I think it was 100 Dips. You can check out his works too. I
Hmm.
don't know how he does it. Like he used geometry nodes. I never tried that myself, but I'm not sure how in the world he create watercolor effect with geometry nodes. It's actually hard even with the regular texturing process, and this guy did it with geometry node simulations. He definitely needs a shout out. Yes, these two persons I follow for their nerdiness. Maybe I will try that sometimes if I get the chance. Yes, geometry nodes sounds something useful for my line of work. If not for game
Yeah.
project, it can be still a great and resourceful technique for animations.
Oh yeah, definitely. There's a lot of things you can do with those.
Yes, there is just no boundaries.
Well, well. We've reached the final question and section of the podcast, which is called time capsule. So let me explain. Imagine if you had like a only a limited amount of time, and in that limited amount of time, let's say a couple of minutes, you had the opportunity and a chance to say anything you want, from one human being to another human being, like from yourself to anyone who might be listening to this podcast at any point of time in future. What do you have to say? It could be anything. It's not about art. It's just anything, if you could leave anything, from your life experience, what are some things you would want to say?
Yes, I understand what you mean. It's like a pretty deep and hypothetical question. I wish I was a more experienced person to answer this, but since you haven't placed any restriction, I can give it a try. I can talk about my experience, like what helped me to create a better mindset and overall. So,
All right, folks. Well, I think you guys could kind of understand what happened. There were some technical difficulties we had to cut during the call, and now we're back. And as you were saying, by the way, about the mindset that helped you a lot in your growth, and the thing you wanted to share with people, and it was about a mindset. Now you can continue with
yes.
that.
So, it all began from taking responsibility. I mean, for instance, you can consider this. When we get success in something, whom do we account the most? I think it is ourselves, right? So we'll have to think that I do this job perfectly. Uh, it is all thanks to me. And when we fail at something or makes a blunder, we don't do the same thing, do we? We actually tends to find something called external factors like, yes, I I could have done this job better if that person didn't mess these things up for me. It's like something like that. So these are external factors and internal factors. So it is just like a self-defense mechanism so that we can perhaps get a move on. But it has some serious drawbacks, like we can't grow or self-improve if we try to find fault at others for my own failures at something. So I learned about these psychological things a couple of years ago, and since then I have been trying to implement this in my own life. For example, now now if something don't go in my way, I don't try to blame others. I like to keep it take it as my own mistake. And when we do that, we find it much easier to move on and learn from our mistakes because we can forgive ourselves more easily than forgiving others. I think it makes sense. And it also helps me to analyze what mistakes I did, what could have been, how it could have been done a much better way. So that is a major thing that helped me to change my life, both as an artist and everyday regular stuff. I'm not saying I have perfectly mastered it yet. I still try to blame others if things gets very serious. But yes, I try my best. It actually helps me to get a better version of myself regularly. So that's that. And another thing I put great emphasis on is taking care of your health. For example, I think artists are very bad at taking care of their health. I mean, many of them have bad sleeping habits and stuff. I mean, it's not worth it. Don't ruin your sleep at the very least. I mean, if a machine becomes very hot, you don't fuel it further, you use coolant. Sleeping is like that. It helps us to healing our body and mind. Yes, it is not worth it, no matter how much you earn by sacrificing your sleep. So these are the things I put most emphasis on, learning from our blunders or mistakes and trying to take good care of health.
All right, I think that's a wrap on this episode. Thank you so much for coming by. Where can people contact you if they had any questions, or just want to say hi?
Yes. Sorry? Did
Where
you?
can people contact you if they had any questions? Is your Instagram account okay?
Yes, they can reach me out on basically anywhere they can find me, like Instagram or Twitter. Even people also reach me out by Gmail. I'm not sure how they find this. Maybe from YouTube. That would be my
Yep.
best guess. I mean, in anything is fine, even art station. And I'm always happy to get a knock from people, no matter what it is about. I try to respond.
All right. So with that out of the way, again, thanks so much for coming by, and thank you anyone who tuned in and listened to this episode. I hope you all enjoyed this episode as well. Leave any suggestions or comments or critiques down in the comment section down below, whether on Castbox, YouTube, Instagram, or send me a DM about it. And well, that's about it. Take care, everyone. Stay safe. Till next episode.
Yes.